guys, how's it going? Marissa here. I'm actually overly excited to talk about the artifacts that I have to show you guys and how it has affected my past, my present, and hopefully my future. So I'm just going to dive right in here. I do have a visual going on in the background for you guys in case you get sick of me talking to you. So what you're looking at in the background, in case you can't recognize, it is an actual deep dive presentation of the Titanic. This was shot and filmed by James Cameron. I believe the year was 1995 that he actually went down and shot footage for what would be the 1997 movie Titanic that I'm sure we all know. So naturally, as a very young person, I wanted to see Titanic like everybody else because everybody was talking about it. So when I finally did see it a few years after its release date, I was immediately struck with a wave of curiosity. I wanted to learn everything I could about this ship. And it wasn't until years and years later that it really clicked with me why, the more I went on and researched it. I've been researching, learning, and writing about the Titanic for the better part of my life now. And so I have some really fun and interesting things and stories that I'm going to talk to you guys about. The first artifact that I have, hopefully you can see it. It's right there. I don't want to hold it too close because then I'll lose focus of it. But it's a very tiny piece of rust. This was given to me when I was 12 years old by a tour guide who was taking my class through the Titanic artifact exhibition that was in Cleveland at the time. It has since been back once, and I've been to it both times. But at the time that I was 12, they had what is referred to as the big piece of the side of the Titanic that was recovered and is now in multiple traveling exhibitions and museums today. So the tour guide felt really bad that a younger version of myself was unable to take pictures inside because I was so interested and I was already so knowledgeable about the ship. So he actually scraped off part of the big piece for me and gave it to me. And I've had it ever since I was 12 in the same baggie that he gave it to me in. And it is something that I've kept very close to my heart. As small as it is, I think that it was awesome how he was literally willing to put his job on the line to give this to me, and how at a young age I have a part of something that I was so curious about, and all it did was make me want to know more about, you know, this little piece of ship that I have. Now, a significant number of years later, I would be given a piece of Titanic wreck wood as a gift from my boyfriend for Christmas a few years ago. This piece of wreck wood was part of a cabinet made on the wheelhouse door that would have gone to the captain's wheelhouse. So this was actually recovered days after the shipwreck, when they had a bunch of people go in to recover any remaining bodies and debris and anything else that may have been floating around. So now that I've shown you a piece of the wreckwood and a piece of the Titanic rust, two really cool, to me, what are really cool items and very valuable to me personally, even though they're so small, I'll now tell you how this actually connects to me and my heritage. Like I said earlier, the dominant heritage on the Titanic were Irish. A lot of Irish immigrants were coming over to find new and better jobs in America. And so years and years after my researching, I did know I had relatives, very distant relatives, who actually built the Titanic, but I wanted to know if I had anybody who was actually on and traveled on the ship. And then after hours and hours of researching, I came across the name Mary Delia Burns. She would have been my great second aunt on my grandmother's side. Unfortunately, Mary Delia did pass away on the Titanic, and she was only 17, so she never had any direct offspring. She boarded the Titanic in Queenstown, Ireland. Her family were potato farmers, which if you watched my last video, you know that I have a very strong farming heritage in my family. So I thought that that was really cool when I discovered that this has actually been in my family for decades. Mary Delia, like very many young people on the Titanic, wanted to leave home to find a way to make more money. So her plan was to come to America and be a maid for very well-off family, because at the time that was paying very, very well for young women. And her hopes were ultimately to come back to Ireland with more money for her family. She traveled over on the Titanic with two of her friends, and their story has been told a few different times as being the story of the three girls. She was traveling over with a young woman by the name of Margaret Delaney and Kate Hargaden. I may have botched that last name. But Margaret survived, and unfortunately Kate and Mary Delia passed away. What happened was a young boy let the girls know that they needed to get to the upper decks because he had heard that the ship was going to sink. Naturally, being that far down in the ship, I'll show you where she actually was at the time, so you can kind of have a better understanding of the struggle that it was to make it onto the upper deck of the ship. Third-class passengers would have been right below what was known as the poop deck, and on either deck E or D. So this is kind of this part of the ship, and as you might be able to see, the lifeboats are on upper deck up here, and then naturally what would be on the other side of the ship as well. Being the biggest ship that had ever been built at the time, to kind of get an understanding of how many layers were on this ship, there's the sort of extended blueprint. It was very confusing to walk about the ship, especially if you were in third class, because there were many places that you couldn't get to or go. Thankfully, Margaret, Mary, and Kate, when they had boarded the ship, they were able to walk around a little bit more. You were invited, and civilians were invited to walk about the ship before it actually took off for New York. So they had a little bit of time to get to know the ship, but then once the journey had actually began, they had to stay within third class boundaries. Their friend Kate had really bad seasickness while she was on the ship, and she was getting very nauseous, and she was unable to climb a ladder to get up to the ship. At this point, they had no idea how fast the ship was going to sink, if it was actually really sinking. They had no idea how much danger they were actually in at the time. So Mary and Margaret came up with the plan that Margaret would go to the upper deck and then send somebody down for help, and then Mary would stay with Kate. Naturally, she ended up being killed by her own kindness, as she was a Titanic victim. No remains or body was ever discovered of her or Kate, unfortunately. Margaret was sort of known for being in one of the last lifeboats that left the ship. She actually had a small knife with her that she used to peel apples, and that knife was ultimately used to cut the rope loose as the Titanic was foundering. Like I have said, I have been researching the Titanic for the better part of my life, but it had never really struck with me how or why until much later in my life, when I actually found out that I had this connection with somebody who perished on the ship. And just knowing, like researching the little bit that is about Mary Delia out there, unfortunately there's not as much information about third class passengers as there are about first class, naturally. But what I was able to find out about her, I noticed a lot of similarities with myself. She was said to be very friendly. In case you guys can't tell, I'm a very talkative person, and I love to find out more about other people. And she oddly also had an infatuation with the Titanic while she was on it. Like I said, she made a point to walk around parts of the ship she knew she wouldn't be able to get to when she had the opportunity. and she enjoyed her time when she was on the ship, which I think is really cool. Her friend who ultimately survived described Mary Delia as being someone who was just very curious, enjoyed her time on there, and very excited to start the new chapter of her life. It's definitely saddening to know that she never got the opportunity to actually make it to America. And it wouldn't be until a few years after the Titanic sunk that her family was able to make it to America. Her parents received 25 pounds from the Titanic Relief Fund in the year 1916, since they had lost their daughter on the Titanic, which doesn't seem like much, but was actually a lot for the working class of that day. So I will show you guys these really cool artifacts one more time because I think they're really awesome. Just knowing I have a piece of the Titanic in my house and on my person pretty much at all times just makes me feel really connected to this amazing event. As sad as it may be, the Titanic wasn't there to be a symbol of despair. It was there to be a symbol of hope for any Irish immigrant or any immigrant in general. Like I had said, unfortunately, majority of the Irish immigrants passed away because they held a third-class ticket. Any third-class male only had a 10% chance of making it to the boat deck. Like I said, a lot of it was just out of confusion and not knowing where to go. So yeah, guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed my short ramble about myself, my heritage, and about my great second aunt, Mary Delia. Finding out that she was there was very awesome for me because I had then a direct connection to something that I always had this wave of curiosity to find out about. I've been to several Titanic museums and several artifact exhibitions and discussions. I've met with historians, and I'm really hoping eventually someday to write my own Titanic book, which I began a few years ago, and hopefully one day we'll see that get published. So yes, these artifacts are very close to my past, my present, and my future, and I hope that you guys enjoyed talking about them. If you ever have any questions on anything Titanic, because to be quite honest, I could go on much longer than 10 minutes, please don't be afraid to reach out to me. It is something that is a passion of mine and something that's very close to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about this, and I can't wait to find out what you guys have in store for me as well. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.